everybody, welcome back to the Soundhole Podcast, episode 10. I am joined again today by Cambridge music local legends, Liam Taylor and Cy Pettit.
What?
And last time you guys were on, we were discussing many things. We were also discussing your new EP, Kicking and Screaming, from your project Blue Alatar. And that EP is now out.
Yeah, man, it's done so well. We're popular boys, making the popular music.
We have made the money.
We've made so much money. We were on Jimmy Kimmel.
You were almost too big to come back here, but you know what? You've done me the favour.
No, we remember where we came from.
We have the private jet now, so
it's no big
since
deal.
everything happened with Taylor Swift, like we got her jets, so we took a jet each, a brace of jets, stereo jets.
Yeah.
I fly mine. I got my pilot's
You
license.
took jets from Cambridge to Ely.
Yes, that's where they record Jimmy Kimmel. Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Boston.
Yeah, that transatlantic flight's no joke though.
But Cy's nailed the Boston accent, and here it is.
What are you talking about?
It's actually pretty good. It's pretty good.
I'm from Boston.
Boston.
Hey,
Boston.
What are you doing here?
What are you doing?
What are
you doing in Boston?
No, it's been going great, thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
It's like, yeah,
Hell yes.
we're very cool.
You gotta stop saying that out loud.
Why?
I don't know, it undermines the whole thing.
Does it?
A little.
Oh.
Well, I've been listening to the tracks a bunch. I'm
Thank
loving
you.
them. I haven't quite picked a favourite yet.
Oh, okay.
But the first one I heard was No Thanks to You.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, the first things that I hear of anything become my natural favourite.
Sure.
Because that's just the reference point for everything. So we're going to do kind of a track by track, sort of in-depth, deep dive description type thing.
Lovely, yeah, sounds good.
From you guys today. So No Thanks to You. Well, actually, what song do you want to start with?
Let's start with No Thanks to You. Like,
Sure.
let's because there is an established order to these songs, but I have forgotten it. So let's
Okay.
just go with the order that you experience them.
Okay,
so, yeah, No Thanks to You is a good one.
We'll go with the order that I heard them in. So, No Thanks to You is a message of hope, overcoming toxic situations, and living life on your own terms.
Yeah.
Would you guys like to elaborate on that?
Totally. So lyrically, No Thanks to You and Look You in the Eyes are two songs about the same situation. So I had a job for a little short of a decade, the first 6 years of which were wonderful. This was a great job. This was a job in music education, really fulfilling. And the last few years were absolute garbage. There was, towards the end of that job, there was just a really gross, corporate, toxic, nasty bullying culture. So I ended up leaving. No Thanks to You is kind of like the hopeful, heroic, positive side of that experience, like deciding, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do a freelance thing, I'm going to do what I want to do, I'm going to do it on my own terms. Look You in the Eyes is a little more about standing up to a very specific bully. They know who they are. I'm sure they listen to this podcast. That seems unlikely.
Whoever you are.
Whoever you
Just
are.
straight up calling people out on the sound hole these days. Straight up.
This is where I come to cuss out my previous employers.
So No Thanks to You is more of a kind of general thing than versus Look You in the Eyes, which is
I think
personal.
Totally, and I think No Thanks to You is like maybe more transferable. I can see it being kind of resonant if you've left like a toxic family situation or like broken out of a toxic relationship, that sort of thing. I think there's sort of parallels there, whereas I think Look You in the Eyes is much more specific.
Because I love the sort of vibe, for absolute lack of better terms coming into my brain right now, but the vibe of No Thanks to You, especially in the lead melody right at the beginning of the song, because it sounds, I mean, I'm sure you can talk about the theory behind it.
Oh,
but like it sounds so happy, yet there's something eerie going on there within the melody itself. I love just the way it's arranged.
The idea of that chord structure and that melody came from me sort of listening to like 90s pop rock, like Blur for some reason in 2023. The summer I was just listening to a lot of Blur for some reason. And I sort of thought a lot of what is really good in that kind of music is like a really standard set of chords, but you throw one janky note in there and make that the absolute centerpiece. So the thing that the hammered dulcimer is playing, Cy with his perfect pitch is going to correct me if I get this wrong, but I think the melody is A, B, E, A sharp, B, E. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
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 So like going from that A to that A sharp, and it is an A sharp rather than a B flat because we also have a B in there because we're based in E. So we're deliberately throwing in a flat 5, the most cursed of all notes, and really making that the centerpiece. But because it's played on a really lovely sounding hammered dulcimer, it just sort of blends and sounds nice. It's actually layered. I think there's a guitar with way too much distortion playing that in the open position and the hammered dulcimer, so it creates this sort of really satisfying wall of sound.
It really seems to embody, though, the journey of seeing something that you once loved just deteriorate.
Oh man, can I just I'm gonna say from now on that was my intention.
Well,
That was your intention all along.
Yes.
it may have been a subconscious intention.
Could have absolutely, my subconscious is way more smart than I am. That totally sort of fits with that whole vibe of like, no, I don't subscribe to your ideas of diatonic harmony. have a flat 5, or I think in that context it's probably an augmented 4th rather than a flat 5 because it
don't
ascends.
ask me.
You were going to call it a B flat, you coward.
Shut up. Sick of you and your bullshit. I'm out.
Hooroo. You're going to give me a lift still.
Okay.
So I think there's versions of this song. I think if we were to do like an unplugged version, I think acoustic guitar would try to incorporate that melody into the chords as well. So you'd have like a E sus4, then like a B diminished or something, then like a D sus2 and an A sus2. I think there's like some really interesting chords that fit around that. But for this kind of folky pop rock version, like the guitars are doing just some very straightforward kind of power chordy type of stuff. I mean, that is really like the most interesting part of the song from like a harmony perspective, from like a music theory perspective. Otherwise it's just very straightforward kind of pop rock chords, I think.
Well, that's great because it kind of the chords in the background really kind of hold things together in a very defined way, whereas the melody kind of has a bit of a mind of its own.
Yes.
Like it kind of fights against it and then comes back around.
And I think like the intention there was to have the chords behind it, the underlying harmony, be quite simple, but that allows this thing to really stand out and do its own thing, rather than kind of clashing, because if the underlying chords are doing something that doesn't complement it, it's just going to end up like being a big mess, which me 10 years ago would have been like, that's on purpose, it's supposed to sound crowded.
It kind of
doesn't always work.
The song reminded me somewhat of a band that I've always loved. The band is called Failure.
Okay.
I love Failure.
I do not know them. Okay, interesting.
Oh, Liam, I reckon you'd love.
Sweet, okay.
Like Failure. Failure were like they're described as space grunge.
Yeah.
They were kind of
Yeah.
around in the early to mid 90s and then broke up. Just before they broke up, they released an album called Fantastic Planet, which is an incredible album. I could go on about that for days.
It was like Silverchair if they did shoegaze almost.
Yeah. It was so.
I fucking love Silverchair.
It was so dense and beautiful, but just down to earth as well. I've got a bunch of favourites from that album. One of my favourite songs ever is Another Space Song.
I love Another Space Song.
Oh, it's beautiful. But then they sort of they went. I don't know. You can look it up. People the history of the band. But they went their separate ways. Got back together quite suddenly, 2016 or so, and have released more albums since then, and they're all fantastic.
Cool.
But yeah. Anyway, sorry. Quick aside.
I'll check
there,
them out.
but
Like
check out
Failure as a concept is something I'm very familiar with, so I imagine I'll like the music.
They became known as your favourite band's favourite band.
Cool.
Like a
musician's musician. I love that.
A Perfect Circle did a cover of one of
Sweet. Okay.
of A Nurse Who Loved Me.
Yeah, because that's how I found out about Failure.
Yeah. It was one of the songs.
But the weird thing is, I found out. I know this is another tangent, but I found out about A Perfect Circle because I was like, this is back in the day when LimeWire was a thing, and I was trying to find David Bowie songs, specifically Ashes to Ashes, and they did a live cover of Ashes to Ashes that somebody had like bootlegged or something, because I could never find it on any official release, and I was like, these guys are cool. I like their version of Ashes to Ashes. What else have they done? Oh, cool. And then from A Perfect Circle, I found out about Tool. It's just mad. I love the mad little tangents you can go on, just like, because you get a lot of like, it's like crossbreeding plants,
Yeah,
almost.
yeah.
You just get like a lot of little different bits here and there. Like here's some pollen from this one. Here's a little bit of leaf from this one. I don't know.
You can see where the progression of inspiration comes from.
Yeah, and sort
Where
of
the
like
seeds
the
were
Venn
planted.
diagram of how it all connects. It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't mean to go on.
No. So I was going to say with no thanks to you in particular, Sai. Obviously, your performance across all 3 songs is phenomenal. But
you're very kind.
I really love in this track in particular how your voice sort of interacts with the hammer dulcimer. I feel like just like tonally it really fits together nicely.
I hadn't thought about that. I just kind of did it because I was asked to do it.
That is how it went down.
Yeah, I mean, because the way in which I would describe my voice is quite bassy. Like it's a baritone kind of deal. Like I'm not usually used to doing the high stuff. So I think because like the interaction there between the hammered dulcimer and me works just because we're not stepping on each other's toes so much in the mix.
Yeah.
But also like because there's like the third verse sort of towards the end where it's a lot more muted, like stripped back a bit, and there's me just like it's your move and all this other kind of stuff. And I really like the sort of the dynamic changes there, the way in which it sort of just kind of fades in and out, and then it all brings it back in, and it's really nice and like. It's fucking phenomenal to be a part of it.
Yeah, man, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Because your voice also, it is, I definitely agree with it being the kind of baritone range, but you've also got a lot of lovely high-end detail in your voice, so it cuts through like...
If I shout, yeah. Which again is...
So your voice has a buttery quality to it.
Yes.
If I could put a...
smoke up my arse, mate.
If I could put a nonsense audio music word on to describe it.
No, it's like silky and nice. And
I think because I'm used to kind of interacting with like basically like I used to do like choir at school, and like because my voice broke when I was like 13. Like, I was like, right, you're the bass. I'm like, oh, good, I'm the bass voice. So I've just kind of always been used to being in that range, which is like it's a bit difficult. Or at least I found it a bit difficult trying to do like sort of singer-songwriter stuff, because it was just like I'm not really in the right range for that. It's probably not the case at all, but like I was always worried I probably sound a bit too much like Leonard Cohen. Nobody wants to hear that. How wrong I was, because everybody loves Leonard Cohen, but it's just like I didn't feel like I was allowed to exist in that space almost. You know what I mean? Like it didn't feel like I'd earned it.
I guess like the classic singer-songwriter move is to pick up a guitar and start singing to it, and I think feeling like the kind of not necessarily bassy, but feeling that like low end coming off the guitar and then not knowing where you can sit above that, like sitting above that instrument seems to be the instinctive thing, right?
Which is why I ended up getting into baritone, just because it's a bit more like again, it's like I'm not stepping on my own toes as much.
Baritone guitar, that is.
Baritone guitar. But which again is not a thing that people do much. I mean, you get 7 strings where like you've got this low B you can play with now, but it's not usually a standard tuning in the traditional sense. You know what I mean? So like just having a 6-string baritone allowed me to kind of like do more with what I could in my range. Interacting with that sort of level. But again, it was because like I think I said this in the last episode, like Liam sort of knows how to get the best out of me in the context of what he wants me to do. So like I've always been quite appreciative of the fact that he actually wants me around. He laughs, but it's true.
He's never said that out loud, and I'm going to bring it up later.
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine. I've still got some dirt on you in the first episode.
Yeah, you do.
But yeah, no, it's an interesting one, because I think it allowed me to sort of figure myself out a bit more, which I think like if any musician who's trying to create stuff, that's like the best thing you could possibly ask for. It's like I've learned more about myself through doing this thing. And the best thing for people to do is to learn more about themselves and understand themselves.
It's the only way you can move forward and
it's character development.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's those are my thoughts on the subject.
It was really fun to work with you and kind of produce and direct you in that way. I think that's one of the kind of skills that people don't think about when they want to get into audio production and like creative music production and stuff, is that you got to learn how all these cables work with each other, and you should probably know what MIDI is and what's phase and when is that a good thing. But actually, how are you going to get the best out of your performers? How are you going to get something that like complements what you're trying to do out of your performers? And like the performer bringing their A game might be great for them, but does it complement the overall project? You know, the kind of the people management skills. I've sort of found, like spending close to a decade working with young people in a music capacity, and then doing little bits of like film directing here and there. I guess I've got a pretty good kind of communication and director skill set, and I think a lot of it is because we've known each other for so long that I think I was able to know like the specific language to use to get certain stuff.
But it's also because I'm comfortable with you. You're not like a
Totally.
stranger.
Yeah.
That does help as well. Like if you gel with someone like we do, then
Yeah.
you're gonna do well.
Yeah.
Like
having that kind of musical rapport with someone is really invaluable. And it can be a challenge to work with somebody you've never met before. But if you're trying to do any freelance stuff, that's just something you have to do, and you have to be a very nice person.
Yes.
But like essentially, you have to want to be good to work with.
Yes.
But on the flip side to that, when it comes to your own creative endeavors, it's so good to just have someone or multiple people that you know how to play off each other's skills.
Totally.
I feel like me and Jake from Sun Machine, I feel like we have that rapport, and that's only because we've been playing guitar and bass together for 10 years.
Yes.
So it doesn't come from anywhere else than that.
It's literally you
just
can
putting
only
the
do
time
that.
in.
it's not always about time though. It's about like your willingness to interact with somebody else's way of doing. Just to name drop my current main thing, which is 6 a.m. Saint. What up, guys? It was like one thing that I think was initially quite scary for me was the fact that like when I first started playing bass for them, like just how quickly like it all just kind of like let's just get in and
It just
do
sort of happened.
It just
didn't
kind of happened.
Yeah, I
and like
remember.
that's super rare, but also not impossible. And it was a similar thing with me and you. I think like as when we started making music together, it was just like, oh yeah, this works.
yeah.
This is fine.
I sort of don't even really remember us initially working on music together. I think it just sort of
It just happened, and it was like, this is fine.
Yeah.
Like you just can carry on as normal.
There was no like conscious thought or working hard or anything. It just kind of happened. So,
Because the thing is as well is like the more people you work with, like the more you develop as a musician as well.
Yes.
Like even with like some of my earlier bands, because I mean I've been trying to do stuff like that since I was in college, or even before that, and like you always take something away from the people you've worked with. It's like, this cool technique I figured out whilst I was doing this thing, or this is the point at which I realised I could do this, and like it all just kind of amalgamates into who you are as a musician or as any other kind of like creative endeavour. Like it's valuable.
Yeah.
I can't remember what my original point was.
It's in there
but
somewhere.
Yeah,
It's
Clicking when you click with someone.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are ways in which you can just sort of like learn to click with people easier.
Yes.
And that is just a key part of sort of like your development as a musician.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's helped in a lot of ways.
It's probably worth like using that to pivot into talking about the other two people that are on this particular track.
Oh hell yeah, those guys are great.
So Harry Beasley is a drummer that I've known for ages and ages. Harry Beasley is on these 3 tracks. Harry is, well, first off, he's one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. He's also he's a bit of a linchpin in Cambridge music because he runs like a bunch of open mic nights and he's in a bunch of bands. I mean, he's a drummer, he's in all the bands, isn't he?
Of course, yeah.
Really good singer, really good guitarist, like super musical dude, and I've known him for ages, and I'm really thrilled that I managed to pin him down and get him on this EP. What we ended up doing was we did a skill trade. He was running a set of music nights at a new venue and he wanted like a bit of help with like the marketing and the promo of that, so I basically did him X amount of hours for that. I was like, right, you owe me X amount of hours drumming. So we just traded like that, which I think was really cool. And actually, if you're on a budget, that's probably worth doing. Worth considering, because money be crazy. He did a great job on the drums, and he he really sort of brought a bit of his own personality. There's some drum fills in this EP that are absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, he did a great job. And we've got like a couple other songs that we need to tie up for related music that's coming out soon. Big up Harry Beasley. And Hammered Dulcimer was Ellie Winter. Now I know Ellie Winter, and I met her ages ago when, so we were talking about in the last episode, the Stab Panda Presents podcast many years ago. Tape Runs Out were one of the first bands we spoke to. And I remember having like quite a good chat with these two people. It was Liam and Ellie from Tape Runs Out.
Yeah.
And I wrote that melody for Yang Chin, which is a free VST I got from Native Instruments a while back. Sounds very similar to the Hammered Dulcimer. And around about the time that I was realising I wanted to do like an album or an EP or something, I was thinking it would be a lot cooler if I could get real players in, especially on these folk instruments. How am I going to find a Yang Chin player? This is Cambridge, we don't make Yang Chins over here. So I sort of thought, okay, well, what sounds a bit like a Yang Chin? Oh, there's a Santor, the Indian equivalent of the Hammered Dulcimer. No, that seems unlikely. And then eventually remembered, oh yeah, no, we've got Hammered Dulcimer in this country. We've got a long history of Hammered Dulcimer. Why does the word Hammered Dulcimer sound familiar? Oh yeah, because the tape runs out. Let's send Ellie a message. And yeah, they were up for it, which was great. So we did the No Thanks to You, and then there's another track with Hammered Dulcimer that will be out in the future. Yes, so Hammered Dulcimer is really cool. We had to tweak the tuning of the dulcimer ever so slightly to accommodate the one janky sharp 4, and then the other track we did has got like these crazy sort of chromatic Middle Eastern passages, which was an entirely separate nightmare of tuning. But so it was really fun watching Ellie play and then just working out, oh yeah, I don't have that note anymore, it's this note instead, oops. Because just imagine if someone like walks up to your keyboard and just swaps a D with a D sharp and doesn't tell you.
Oh no,
that's not, oh, it's gone. Where'd it go? Yeah, so that was really fun, and sort of working through like a similar kind of process to yourself, Si, of like working out what works for, with Harry and Ellie, like working out what works for them, like what kind of, you know, what language to use, like do they want to be like fast-paced, go get it, or do they want to be a little more chill? Yeah, so I'm really pleased that they both got on board and they were both super enthusiastic to play on my silly music, my great music, which is doing very well. Self-esteem. Yes,
absolutely.
We all have one.
So that leads imperfectly into the next track.
Yes.
On the EP I'm going to ask you guys about. We mentioned it before. Look You in the Eyes is about standing up to bullies, particularly those divisive folks currently in control of our country.
Yes.
But I think, as you mentioned before, it also leads into a personal experience.
Yeah, so this was very much about like workplace toxic environment bullies. I think the that was the initial idea behind it, and this is one that Sayu sort of contributed to the lyrics of this one as well. When we sort of started going down this route, we realised there were a lot of parallels with like dissatisfaction with the way things are in the world. So I know that like a few minutes ago I said this was very specifically pointed at one person, but I realise now that is just not true. Like in my head it is, but it kind of, I guess, is addressing problems with power structures on every level. So for me, that's a personal one-on-one negative experience. But in the same way that No Thanks to You may resonate with you if you're getting out of a bad breakup or a bad family situation, I think Look You in the Eyes is also very relevant if you're dissatisfied with the state of things currently, which I think is sort of the overall vibe of Kicking and Screaming. What else do I want to say about this? I like the chorus for this one. You are not real, you have no power over me, I will look you in the eyes when I tell you, is kind of my approach to things that annoy me. It's like, yeah, but I can just pretend you don't exist. And then, like, what you can do? You're not real, so... Because,
I mean, I guess it's your personal experience with a weird fucking power structure that is just imposed on you, right? Yeah. But, I mean, that's happening on a wider scale constantly all the time. Yes, totally. And it's I guess, as a human being, you at some point have to address how much you're going to let that affect your life.
Totally. And yeah, it speaks very much to like these political systems that we have no control over. And also the specific situation I was in was with a senior member of staff at this job who basically was ignoring specific aspects of the contract that I had. This legal document, they were just ignoring. So my attitude was like, well, you're just going to ignore this legal document, so I'm going to ignore you. Like, what the hell? Like, if time isn't real anymore, this contract doesn't exist apparently, so fuck it, you're not real, you know? Like, what's the point in...
But what they were hoping, I would assume, unfortunately, I would assume what they're hoping you'd do is to be a pushover.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, pretty much. And I was like, I'm just not going to. Good. And then what I discovered after I left was that a bunch of other support staff also kind of quit. Uh-oh.
You gave them the confidence.
Yeah, they were.
You set things right.
Like I had a few people, like when I handed my notice in, like coming up to me in the corridors and going, "Are you the guy?" I want to be the guy. I don't know what that means. Are you the one that stood up to? And I was like, yeah. I told her to do one because she was lying. So I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I was like, yeah. She doesn't.
Why wouldn't you?
She's not real, man. Like, don't worry about it.
You're not just stuck in one place your whole life.
Totally.
No, I did a similar job.
You did.
Roughly at the same time, and lasted about a third as long, I think.
Yeah.
Needless to say, it wasn't even like the job itself. It was just like the really shitty management.
Yes.
Mismanagement, if you will.
Well, it's the education industry being treated like an industry and run by corporations, which is not how anything in the public sector should work.
Yeah, it's bollocks, mate.
Especially education, but yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, so in terms of the instrumentation for Look You in the Eyes, I'm mad fond of a band called The Levellers. I don't know if you're familiar, the kind of folk rock from Brighton, and they very occasionally break out the mandolin. They have like this kind of folk punk thing going on, and very occasionally bring in a mandolin. So I retrained myself to play the mandolin, which is impossible with my large hands, trying to squeeze into those tiny little stupid frets.
They are absolutely tiny.
They're ridiculous.
They? But how small they are.
Yeah, this is why I got into this is the reason that the violin, which is the same tuning, same register, is fretless, because it's impossible to play between frets.
Just get a bigger mandolin.
I did. It's called a bouzouki. We'll talk about that in the next song.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yes. So we've got mandolin in there. We've got like the traditional rock stuff. Harry Beasley on the drums again. Cy doing the singing again. Guitar, organ, bass, and mandolin. I think that's basically it. And the melody is kind of played on this sort of surfy guitar, I think. I don't know where that came from as a concept, but like, I don't know. I think I just plucked that out on a guitar one day and was just like, that needs a heck of a load of spring reverb and tremolo. And it sounded great, and it's like, why does this surf guitar blend so well? And there's a really cool bit with the vocals as well when we drop out of the bridge guitar solo thing, and it's like, it's the surf guitar melody thing. You're doing a slightly gentler version of the chorus line, but then there's like a wall of Simons. Like, how long did we spend on that harmony? It was a while, right?
It wasn't a while. It wasn't as long as I think you think it was.
No? Okay.
So one of the things I can say I'm quite good at is working harmonies out.
Yeah, you are.
I have seen you do that, and you're excellent at it.
Thanks for confirming that, both of you, because I feel like occasionally I need to big myself up.
No, you can. Yeah. That's your one for the episode.
Yeah. There we go.
Done.
Yeah. No, it's because I think like there was the inspiration for that. Because I think you had like an idea about it. I was like, oh yes, because and there's this guy called Jack Conti. He's in a band called Pomplamoose.
Yeah, man.
He's also the guy that runs Patreon.
Patreon, baby.
Shout out to him, I guess.
Jack Conti, if you're listening, thanks for all the patron.
But he did this track years ago that I just randomly stumbled across. I think this was pre-Patreon as well, so he was just making music because he could. It's a track called The Time Has Come, and it's like he's got this cool little like thing going on, and there's just a bit in it where he does this 9-part harmony of his voice, and it's just like ethereal. It's incredible. I was like, god damn,
he's
like
crazy.
That's the kind of shit I need to learn how to do. And it finally got to a point where there was this opportunity to do something like that, and even though it's kind of like a load of like low oohs, it all came together, and it's like, yes, fulfillment. Like it was a really, really good feeling.
My favourite thing to do in those kind of situations is to like build out the harmony, and then just, I think the phrase was, hey Cy, wild card? and then get a couple of wild cards, pan them very far left, very far right, quite low in the mix. So they don't dominate, they don't draw attention, but they're definitely in there, just adding like a bit of character.
Yeah, you just got to listen harder.
You gotta listen harder. You gotta listen to a 31 section of the song on repeat as many times as possible to generate the maximum revenue, and to also, really hear those crazy
let us
harmonies.
bleed money from the streamers.
Yes, gimme. I feel like that's all the stuff in Look You in the Eyes.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah.
Oh, and there's the really sick.
That's not all the stuff.
There's one more stuff. There's the really sick kind of descending mandolin line in the choruses, and especially towards the end of the song where like the Hammond organ and the mandolin play in unison. It's just big chef's kiss. Big fan of that.
Yeah,
that was hard to play on a mandolin.
Yeah,
very hard.
And then I did a little bit of screaming at the end.
You did some yelling, yeah.
It started off as me trying to go like, whoa, all this other kind of stuff, and then just go into. No, not quite that, but you know. I'm trying not to be too loud because, like, you know, there's people who live next door, but also like I don't want to peek on the thing.
But it was, it was like
it was cool. I think it gives it that little bit of edge.
It does
towards the end where it's just like, yes, this is a song that is hopeful but frustrating, and like, you know,
it's catharsis.
It's catharsis.
Big time catharsis.
That's the word.
Big time catharsis is a great band name.
It's like the
Yo,
big.
You got to remember that, dude.
Big time catharsis.
It's the big like, yes, I'm free of this bullshit.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think we did one version where you did quite like a gentle sort of vocal ad lib, and then again I pushed you as like do that more, do it higher, go up. Don't worry about like diatonic purity of this harmony. Just yell for a bit and see what happens.
That's not what you said, but yeah.
No, what did I say?
It was like just do it, mate. Just do it. Do that, but better.
It's all about knowing the specific language to use with Simon.
Yeah.
Just do it proper.
That's what he was thinking.
Yeah.
But what he said was that.
Yeah, pretty much. But it sounds great. And again, like, get to kind of crazy things, pan them far left and right. Sounds dope. And they're not like, they don't dominate in the mix. I think like that sort of Hammond organ, mandolin melody is like center stage, but you got like this vocal craziness going on in the background.
Yeah, I mean,
which I'm a big fan of.
Well, that's how you really create width in a mix. I had an interesting conversation a while ago with. Actually, I think I've had this conversation with two people.
In stereo.
Once was with Jacob from my own band, and the other one, the other time I spoke to someone about this was with my good friend Maximo from the band Echelon.
Hey.
Go check out Echelon.
What up?
We were talking about stereo width of it was with guitars, but it would apply to anything, right? You're trying to make something sound wide,
big, yeah.
And so obviously, you know, if you're recording guitar, you do a left take and a right take, and maybe you do some more takes in between, like left 50, right 50, yada yada yada. And then you'll hear something else, and it will just sound wider than what you have done, and you'll think, what is going on there? So you might throw on some like you'll see in your list of plugins, you've got something that says it's a stereo enhancer, and you throw that on, and you're like, oh, okay. And then it just sounds kind of phasey and weird. It might sound kind of cool if you do it in moderation, but if you're trying to really stretch things out by doing all this mid-side frequency splitting stuff, it's just going to sound a bit weird in the end. But really, if you want to create crazy stereo width that sets a instrument or a wall of instruments apart from things that are more centered, you want them to sound different. The left and right have to sound different. They might play the same guitar part, for example, and play them. It might be, you know, obviously two separate recordings of playing the same part as closely as you can. But I mean, use two different amps, man. Use different pickups on your guitar.
We got
Different
VST
guitars
amps these days.
You know,
different
like
guitars.
whatever you've got access to.
Different tunings. So play the same pitches, but you play in a different position on the guitar, so you get a different tone.
You don't even have to tune. You just do different chord voicings.
Different chord voicings.
Like maybe someone's
totally.
capoed on two, and the other one's just open. You just
that fundamentally though, that is what stereo width is.
Yes.
Your brain says, oh, it's kind of one thing, but it sounds totally different over there to how it does all the way over there.
It's exactly like this is why orchestras have more than one of things.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like you think there's only one piano, but you open up, there's several strings. I've been lied to.
And it just opens up a world of options, because it's kind of like it's almost like a mismatch of logic, because you're like, oh, it has to sound the same, just two different takes, but actually
you
no.
perceive it as a big the same thing.
Yeah.
If I'm doing like a really pared down, like minimal sort of rock ensemble, I do a version. This is just guitar chat now. I do a version of the Eddie Van Halen thing. So the Eddie Van Halen thing was you mic up the guitar amp and you pan that hard left, and you put a microphone in the distance somewhere, the room mic, and you pan that hard right. So it's one take, but it sounds really huge, and because you have the roominess of the room mic, you don't sort of miss it. It just sounds like one big tone. So I sometimes do a version of that where I do that mix, but they're separate takes. So the room mic is a separate take to the close mic.
Interesting. Yeah,
It's basically the same, just recorded twice, and one of them is super roomy, one of them is super close. It's a lot of fun. It does exactly the same thing, it's just a little bit thicker. Yeah, so that's one of my little tricks. I don't think I break that trick out on this one, because there is like layers and layers of guitar. There is a hidden thickness thing in the all but the first chorus of Look You in the Eyes, which is there's a high pedal tone of just the tonic note on guitar, very distorted, just da 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 da, just over the top, but it's kind of buried.
Just to really bulk out.
Kind of bulks it out, anchors it. And otherwise, I think most of the time with guitars, I'm doing one sort of central rhythm guitar, which is, I think I'm basically emulating. I'm using like the Native Instruments Ramfire amps, I think, but on sort of like mid-low gain, and then a similar sort of more of a metal tone really for like a slightly more noisy guitar that's slightly lower in the mix that just kind of bulks stuff out.
It doesn't sound obtrusive though. It really
No.
it blends nicely into the mix.
So.
Like it sounds very thick and dense and everything you want from it, but it doesn't like overtake anything.
I mean, that's always been like my I'm a guitar person really. That's sort of how I got really into music, from like a creative production side of things. But it's always trying to find like, that lovely thick guitar tone. But the problem is when you're jamming by yourself, the tone that sounds really nice in your bedroom by yourself does not play well with others. When you're in an actual band environment, it's like, no, you need to change everything you're doing. That just sounds awful.
I mean, because the first thing that everyone does when they're playing guitar by themselves is scoop their mids.
Yeah, man.
And you're like, oh, this is sick. It sounds so fat and thick and chuggy. And you take that into a band situation and you realise it's just flub and hiss.
And then they take away your wah pedal, then they take away your delay pedal. Like, but I am not a man anymore.
First they came for the wah pedal.
Yeah, they did. At least I don't know
I did
about
not
my...
speak up because I was not Jimi Hendrix.
But then they came for the fuzz and there was no one else to speak out.
And then they shaved me. I had shit mutton chops for like 3 weeks.
You did, it was wild.
Yeah. To be fair, I think I rocked that look, but
did, it was
like
fair.
it was uncomfortable because my chin was too cold. It was just I can't be dealing with this. Chin's too cold, mate.
That's what kicking and screaming's about.
And what a perfect
Cold
segue.
chin. Nailed it, I'm so good at
So
it.
onto the final track that we'll be discussing is the title track from the EP, Kicking and Screaming. It's a love letter to boomers, you've written here.
Yeah.
You've written, I don't think that the older generations realise how responsible they are for the state of the world, which I think from sort of generational discussions that I've been a part of and that I've witnessed, I think there's certainly a lot of truth to that statement of kind of growing up and being told everything's so easy for the young folks these days, except it's also really kind of not. Things are simply different.
Yes.
And things are nicer in some ways. You know, in general, the standard of living has risen for the average person. Excellent.
Tech is cool.
Yeah, it's great stuff, right?
Less syphilis per capita.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of great things that society at large can be grateful for.
Kiss have stopped touring.
Yeah, oh, fuck
Finally.
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. However, there's a lot of like wealth hoarding and global warming's
Yes.
getting out of control, and there's no, for a lot of people, there is no amount of work that can be done to pull them into a financially stable situation,
Yeah, totally.
which is not great.
I mean, I realised something. I was making like a big batch of like social media content and talking about kicking and screaming and the lyrics behind it, and I made this point here, and I want to make it again because I really believe that we need to not be infighting between generations. It's the same as like political infighting when you're all poor as hell is just a distraction. Like, fighting between the generations is just a distraction. There are people in charge who can change things to make it better for everyone. They want to distract us. I really wholeheartedly believe that, but I also wholeheartedly believe that some boomer should just give me a house. It's just not fair that you own several, and it's just not fair that I've had to invent my own career in order to make an amount of money that I can live off of. It's absolutely ridiculous that I shouldn't just be able to go work full time in Sainsbury's and have enough money to support a family on a single income.
Yeah, I
cannot do that.
Do not see why an individual cannot lead a comfortable life on a full-time salary.
It's completely mad.
Even like minimum
Entirely
wage. Even on a minimum wage salary, you should at least be able. If you're working full-time on a minimum livable wage, that should imply, just by saying that you should not be scared.
If you're working
people
full
are
time,
scared.
like it's a logical fallacy that you should not have enough money, whatever you do, to support yourself and your family.
And even to
Completely
start
mad.
saving,
Yeah,
even
totally.
if it's like little by little at first, people can't do that now.
No, of course not. And I think
Unless they're lucky.
and I don't think that like boomers, I don't think they're being malicious. I think they just don't realise how things are. And it's frustrating to see the same sort of generational warfare going on. So there's a lot of unkind language towards boomers, generation fear, lead paint stare, all of these like nasty little jabs. But like, you guys just got to give me a house.
Yes.
Just give me a house, you know?
I mean, because on the flip side, there's a lot of people in the generation that would be described as boomers who are also extremely poor, and the country is doing nothing to help them,
Yes,
and
totally.
they are developing fucking health problems because the
Yeah, of
house is
course.
so cold.
Yeah, and
So it's
Or
not
there's
like
mold.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, you know, they're old. They can't just fix up their house and move on.
No, totally.
You know, they're worried. People at large are worried and scared. However, there is a lot of people who are boomers, excessively boomers, who think that because their life is now easy, everyone's life is now easy.
It's
and the only
more-
reason why their life is easy is because they have accumulated and held on to so much wealth, because they happen to be in the right place at the right time.
or they think that they struggled, therefore it's fair that everyone struggles.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think hashtag not all boomers, certainly. But
I think in recent times it's become less of like a generational delineation and more of a attitude.
yeah, totally.
Like, it's very much an attitude that is born of the kind of values of that era.
Yeah.
And like, some of that's carried on. I mean, there are people like younger than me that literally just like, oh well, you know, I'm just gonna like, you know, get a load of property and like live off the rent. It's just like, bro, you're 23, what are you doing?
yeah.
Yeah, those people are boomers.
Yeah.
That's
Yes,
That's
culturally boomers.
Cultural boomers rather than like, yeah. Because I think like there are a lot of people of that generation who I know who are pretty right on, and I'm just like, yeah, no, like it was bollocks in the 80s, it's bollocks now.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
like, oh right, well, shit, fair play. But of course, like, you know, it as far as like a demographic goes of that particular age range, like they're not asking everybody in that age range what they actually think when they do these little
No,
Ipsos
totally.
surveys
No,
or
of
whatever.
course.
It's very much a case of just like, let's take this particular subset of this age range from like, I don't know, East Sussex, who, let's be honest, right, aren't exactly going to be like, oh yeah, no, I totally think that, you know, the young people have it more difficult. I mean, because the song itself, like it kind of, it doesn't explicitly say it, but it kind of taps into sort of like the concept of generational trauma and how that's kind of like, you know, pushed on. I mean, that's my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
But it kind of like, you know, how we sort of like we get a lot of things from our parents in that respect. Like we have a lot of the same anxieties, they're just applied differently in other ways, and a lot of the frustration comes from just basically being unable to sort of like convince, you know, people of that age, like, look, shit's fucked. Here is how it is fucked, like objectively, and here is the evidence supporting this objective, and they're just like, nah.
Yeah, totally.
And
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of like where all that frustration comes from. It's just like, you don't fucking get it. And I think a lot of that is because despite the fact that like we as millennials are mostly in our 30s now, are still dealing with like our boomer parents who are just like, yeah, but you could just work harder. It's like, it's not about like, if hard work directly translated to how much money or currency you earn, your worth as a person, then the richest people in the world would be like street sweepers and
I need to
oil
also-
rig
yeah.
people.
There'll be teachers. I mean,
Yeah,
teachers
right,
are the hardest working people.
Yeah.
I need to be really clear. I currently am the most financially stable I've ever been. I am working the least hours and the least effort I have ever worked in my entire life. I think everyone should quit their job.
Yeah.
Frankly, like I think there's the sort of what's the opening line for Kicking and Screaming? Puppeteer in a think tank is very much sort of addressing like media literacy and again this generational infighting of like who's encouraging us all to fight with each other. And
Which grifter are you going to give your money
which
to?
grift are you going to give your money to? Yeah, is it Murdoch owned? Probably. So I think, I am blaming like media and Murdoch press and stuff for like all of this infighting. So I feel like I kind of address it there. And ultimately, like the chorus, what are we proud of today is the enemy at the gates are in control is very much about like these sort of, it's hard not to like describe these people as dumb, but like reading in the papers that like, oh, Britain's so great, this NHS is great, we're on our own, no more Europe, we're really nailing this, and it's like
The NHS has been trashed.
yeah,
People have this idea that the entire fucking country looks like London or Cambridge.
yeah,
You
and
know?
the newspapers are like, you should feel really grateful to be British or English, you gotta wave that flag, you gotta clap for the NHS, you gotta not worry about where Bojo put all that money. Like, I don't feel proud about being British at all. I'm embarrassed, frankly. Like,
I'd like to feel some pride about it, but
Yeah,
that's why
I just don't.
I lean really heavily into the whole being half Greek thing because
man.
like that's at least somewhat exotic.
That's true.
It's fucking interesting. Point is, if you've got a rich cultural background, that is awesome, and you should talk about that.
I can talk about it if you want.
Go off.
So, well, the one interesting thing I found out, basically, to give a little bit of historical context, there was this thing back in like the early 1800s called the Greek War of Independence, and basically that was the ethnic Greeks who for years had just called themselves Romans when they were living around Anatolia, because Romanes, is the descendants of the Byzantines and the Eastern Roman Empire and all this other kind of stuff. They're like, no, let's like refashion the Greek identity and shit like that because Greeks. And basically during all of that, I should mention like this is a really, really bloody war. This is the 1800s. Nobody really cared if you like committed a bit of ethnic cleansing here or there because ultimately like it was a harsher time.
Yeah, they're not being graceful about this.
Yeah, the bar was like, it wasn't high, but it wasn't low either. This was like par for the course. I mean, if you look at like the Peninsular Wars, oh my god. But I digress. Basically, there was this kind of idea that like, within like the Western powers at the time, Western Europe's like, the UK, France, whatever. It was like, we kind of owe the Greeks like a little bit of credit for creating the very concept of democracy, which is attributed to ancient Greece for some reason. But yeah, fair enough.
Take it.
Might as well. And so to this end, like Britain, France, Russia, a couple of the other various powers are just like, maybe the Greeks should have like a country. And to this end, they were kind of like, it was also just a way to like get back at the Ottoman Empire for existing for like 900 odd years,
inventing footstools.
Yeah, and really nice carpets. So ultimately what happened was there was an uprising in Greece. It all kind of just kicked off there, or what is now known as Greece. I suppose it was always known as Greece, but it was like it was a region of like the Ottoman Empire. It wasn't actually like its own thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like Poland. It comes and goes.
Like a cat.
So sometimes
Technically, it lives here, but
sometimes it's attached to Lithuania for some reason, and then they're just like, nah, bro.
Russia keeps feeding it.
Yeah, and then starving it and then feeding.
Weird.
Yeah, man, European history is wild. Anyway, so there was this guy who was previously like, just like a guy who was in charge of bandits called Kaleftos in and around Greece. And his name was Theodoros Kolokotronis. He ended up being like the commander of like the Greek rebel forces, and was like a key player in like liberating that peninsula. And then eventually it got to a point where the whole thing was eventually resolved, like, I think 4 or 5 years later, and the Ottomans were like, okay, fine, you've rebelled, have Greece back, whatever, who cares? And I'm apparently descended from that guy.
Oh,
which
yeah,
is
dude,
wild.
that rules.
I still haven't like figured out exactly how, because it's from my mum's dad's lineage. So like he apparently got bullied in school for it, which is wild. Like, imagine getting bullied because, like, oh, you're descended from the guy that helped liberate Greece. Dickhead.
Nerd.
It's like,
My kids are horrible creatures.
Chris are the worst.
They'll find
go
anything
for
to take the piss out of you for.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's a wild one because it's just like, I mean, he got kicked out of school because he broke that kid's arm, which is hilarious. That's a whole thing. So my mum's dad and like his younger sister, my aunt, she basically managed to work this out somehow, or she did some more research into it to kind of like solidify the actual thing. I haven't seen any of it. I don't actually know if it's true or if it's just like we've decided like as a family to just accept it because who's going to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
But I only found this out like 3 years ago.
That's
from
cool.
my mum. I'm just like, wait, for real? And she's like, yeah, it's no big deal. It's like, yeah, but it would have been kind of cool to know that in like my mid-20s to make me seem more interesting. But yeah, that's fine. Go off. And yeah, so like that's currently the thing I'm trying to figure out is like, am I actually like a descendant of this dude? Because there's mixed emotions there. Because like, you know, 1800s, it's a war. There's rebellion. Dude was definitely responsible for like 2 or 3 big massacres of civilians. And it's just like, okay. But he did liberate Greece, and there's a whole ass museum dedicated to him. So
It'd be interesting to know, because that would explain why when we go to peninsulas, you get filled with bloodlust.
Yeah, I think it's a weird little thing like that.
It's just a thing.
It's
It's
why
like
I
an
can't,
ancestral memory.
I can't go to Spain anymore because I'm just like,
Well, Spain is one big peninsula.
yeah, exactly. Can't go to Spain anymore.
Or Exeter.
Or parts of Essex. Like
That was a separate...
I always wondered why, like, every time I used to go visit my cousins in Clacton, I'd get really, like, antsy, and it's just like, oh, it's another fucking peninsula, bro. I
wanna
can't
liberate the
Tendring Peninsula,
peoples.
can't deal with it. Or maybe it was just because Clacton sucked. I don't know.
Do you have a peninsula you'd like to free? Write in.
Yeah, let us know.
You've got a P.O. box,
We'll
right?
get on that. You should have one. But back to kicking and screaming.
I think we can tangent that in smoothly. Independence, fighting for your right to party.
I think that's why I identified with the song so much. It kind of felt like a callback to some kind of
We could use the bouzouki to pivot.
the bouzouki. Yes, of course, because there's bouzouki in this one.
bouzouki in this
bouzouki is a traditionally Greek instrument that the Irish adopted, and also
Turkish.
I'm sorry, my brain kind of fell asleep there. So what we're saying is, you should break your landlord's arm.
Yes.
I think was the point.
There's
there.
there's 2 salient points to this podcast. Break your landlord's arm, quit your job, play bouzouki. I invented the third one.
Yeah, please explain this bouzouki.
Bouzouki. So, when I was writing Kicking and Screaming, I wanted to do like a folk EP. I wanted it to be like as folky as possible. Obviously, there's mandolin in the other songs. There's hammer dulcimer in the other one. And the central melody in Kicking and Screaming I'd written for a Hammond organ, and I kind of played with a hurdy-gurdy sample or Ilian pipe sample, bagpipes as well, and just none of it, like those were all too dense sounds. I don't know if you've ever mixed a hurdy-gurdy, it's a headache. Would recommend, fun, but headache. So I liked it on the organ, but like I wanted a little bit more in there. So the first port of call was to hire a didgeridoo player, a chap called Pitts Quattrone, who's in the States, who I know through my good friend Roman Armstrong, who is a magician. Pitts Quattrone laid down some wonderful didgeridoo for this track, and he's just kind of in there doing its own thing during the verses, just adding some real vibes. And I was like, that's cool. So I've ticked the box in terms of folk music or world music. It's not enough though, so I started thinking about, well, I don't really know what players are available in my local area. Is there something that I could learn, or is there a way I could tune the guitar or something that would sound kind of folky? So I started researching instruments and came across, well, actually what I came across was the octave mandolin, the mandola, which is like a mandolin, but the frets are bigger and it's in a deeper register, so someone like me with my large hands might actually be able to play it comfortably. So I go to Hobgoblin Music. I have a little bit of a spending spree Hobgoblin Music in Brighton, and one of the things I buy, they actually didn't have any octave mandolas in stock, but they had a bouzouki, which is kind of functionally the same. So bouzouki, you can kind of strum out chords on it like a guitar. It really lends itself to kind of Irish style, kind of Celtic melodies. Turkish instrument, I think Turkish/Greek instrument.
It's definitely more
Gravel.
Greek.
So what happened was it started in Turkey and it had a rounded back. Then the Greeks took it, I think they flattened the back, and then it somehow made its way to Ireland where they changed the top string to a D. I think that's how the bouzouki
Damn,
evolved.
you've read up on...
I've read
kind of
several
these things.
Wikipedia entries.
One of the reasons that the Cypriots and the Irish get on so well,
Yes.
because we share a musical instrument and a mutual distrust of the British.
Yes, which I totally understand. So I got hold of this bouzouki and sort of... I bought it in December and basically learnt the bouzouki by arranging Kicking and Screaming for bouzouki. So that sort of keyboard melody I worked out on the bouzouki, and then wrote a couple little parts. There's like a little bit in the chorus that's quite a nice sort of open position thing on the bouzouki, which, you know, wouldn't have come from another instrument because this is tuned a particular way. And I think that really lends itself to the song as well. Yes, that's the story of bouzouki.
Damn, that was... I'm getting some interesting history lessons.
Yeah, man.
on
So is
the
everybody
podcast.
listening? That's
I
the
think
fun
so,
part.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is a culture and music history podcast
Yeah, man.
now. Which is great because I don't really know that much about that. So we can all learn
Now you
together.
do.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Just read Wikipedia for a few hours and you basically get the gist of it. The one thing I would really like to talk about in this track, at least, you know...
Is it that one high vocal bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
I was just like... Because was that your idea?
It was, and you were like, I can't sing that high. And it's like, Simon, just believe in yourself. Come on, buddy.
Then I did, and it was great.
And he
It
did.
was just like, yeah, okay, fuck it, why not? And it is probably my favourite part of that entire song.
We were working on ad-libs. We'd done like, we did the chorus and the verses on separate days. And I was like, I just want some cool stuff. I just want some like vamping, some ad-libs. So we tried out a few things, and I think the verse one, the end, there was like a double of a line or something.
It was the long enough. Long enough!
Yeah.
I'm just in the background doing my thing.
And then I was like, I want to do the same sort of thing on the second verse, Believe Their Mind. Can you do it higher? And you're like, oh, I don't know. I'm not very self-assured, Liam. I need some kind words.
Please boost my confidence.
Please boost my confidence. So I did, and then you did it, and it was great, and it sounded awesome. And it still
really
sounds
does.
awesome.
It does. Like it genuinely. Like I cannot. I'm so glad I now get to share that with people.
Yeah, we just need to. I want people to listen to 31 seconds of that bit just on a loop. Maximise the monetary value of these episodes, of these songs.
Music is a business.
Music is a business. Yeah. No, that bit's really dope. I'm really fond of that.
Yeah.
And it's fun to sort of like, especially that was like one of the last things we did. When you know you've basically finished a creative project and you sort of just go, and now it's screw around time. Let's just try some stuff out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter because we've finished the project. Can we add some special sauce?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yes, and
Yes.
the sauce was.
Yes, it was hummus. And then
Hummus isn't a sauce; it's a dip. Tahini is a sauce.
we're learning so much about the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Is that like, I think in the whole EP, that's the only point where you break into that vocal register,
I
isn't
think
it?
so. Yeah.
It's special, I like
Because
it.
a lot of it was just kind of like me trying to add a bit of gravel to my voice.
Yes.
Whereas that was just like, yeah, let's falsetto this bitch.
Let's do it, man.
And
it worked.
I genuinely was surprised.
Yeah.
I was like, cool, that's another thing that I can put in my hat
Yes.
and say I did.
There's one for your LinkedIn, you can prove it now.
Oh, true.
Falsetto. It's all about that LinkedIn.
Yeah. Oh, don't talk to me about LinkedIn. I've had a bit of a time with LinkedIn recently.
fair
I'm just
enough.
like,
You
oh,
want to talk about it?
no.
Okay.
Like,
Shout out to LinkedIn.
no,
What up, LinkedIn?
no.
Today's sponsor. LinkedIn jobs.
No shout out to LinkedIn. I'm having a bad time with it. I don't know what
I love
to
how
do.
we're like, quit your job, kill your landlord, or whatever we said, and now it's like, by the way, have you ever heard of LinkedIn?
Free the Greeks, buy a bouzouki, kill your landlord, quit your job, Go to LinkedIn Jobs for your next employment opportunity.
Well,
Now, before we round off this discussion tonight, lads.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a question that I would like to pose to you, Liam, that you may have told me to ask. But I don't see, out of my own pure ignorance, I guess I didn't even I might not even appreciate the depths of conversation that we're about to get into here.
You're going to love this. I know exactly where this is going.
So,
it's going to be special.
Please,
I'm terrified.
Liam, let's address my curiosity and hopefully the listeners' curiosity. What exactly is the difference between folk music and world music?
It's so funny. Yesterday, I was in the shower. I just got thinking about stuff, and I went down this rabbit hole. So I dropped Ross a message. It was like, "Hey, by the way, if you really want to trigger me, here's a question."
That was the question.
That was absolutely the question. What's the difference?
you did this to yourself.
Yeah, man.
basically.
Like, this is. I've rehearsed this so many times. This is going to be great.
And do you like how naturally I pushed the conversation?
No
in that
one
direction?
noticed that it was
Yeah.
pre-prepared. It's so organic.
Well,
The difference between world music and folk music. Okay, right. Thing number one, genre is a social construct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people really like putting things in boxes. Yeah. This is why like people in general really struggle with gender being a spectrum, sexuality being a spectrum, autism being a spectrum. Like everything that makes us unique as people is a spectrum.
Yeah.
But we need to kind of put things in boxes in order to understand them.
We want to obsessively catalogue everything.
Yeah, totally. Because otherwise, like we need to understand things. Is it this way, or is it this way? Because that will determine how I interact with it, rather than thinking I don't need to know what this person's deal is because it's not my business. Which is my attitude to most people. So genre, the language we use around genre is important in like an academic sense. It's important to music journalists when they need to describe things with really broad strokes to an audience who are perhaps not necessarily musical. So if you say, it's a bit like reggae, really, the reader sort of knows roughly what to expect from this thing. So the language around genre is important to everyone except musicians, right? So the difference between world music and folk music is something is either world music or folk music, depending on whether or not you live near where it was made.
Interesting. Okay.
So it's-
I'm going to assume folk means closer. World means further
Yes.
away. Because my real confusion with this, Lee, is you say there's a difference between folk music and world music, but as I understand it, there are folks who live on the world.
Now it's funny you should mention that.
But it makes sense that some folks would be further away on the world than some other folks.
This is the clip.
fuck is this?
This is the promo clip, isn't it? We're in the marketing asset now.
God.
Can you feel it?
No, I was joking there, but I do genuinely know exactly what you mean,
Yeah.
and I'd like to hear your further thoughts on it.
Can I interject?
Of course you
briefly, because having thought about this for about 30 seconds, and given that it now has a geographical aspect to it,
Yes.
does this mean that, like, say for example, you're in Egypt
Yes.
and you're listening to some traditional Egypt music?
Yes.
Like, now, as you are located in Egypt, what you're listening to is Egyptian folk.
Bingo.
Right.
Yeah.
But to a Egyptian person, were they to listen to, like, I don't know, Fairport Convention, they'd be like, it's English world music. Like, would they have that? Would they have that definition of it, or would they just?
Here's the bit where we get into genre is racist. Hear me out.
Oh wow!
Okay.
Hear me out.
Okay.
So you are broadly speaking accurate. So folk music is if you say folk music, you think Morris dancing, you think bagpipes, you think maybe hammered dulcimer. If you're local to like the UK. Okay, so that music stems from the indigenous peoples of Great Britain, right? You look at music made by indigenous peoples in Senegal, that's now world music, right? But it's folk music to them because they live there, right?
Yeah, it's the folks.
Yeah, it's the folks what made it. The real difference between folk music and world music is because we've got this sort of Western idea of what music should be. So what we call folk music is the indigenous music local to us in Europe, and every other piece of indigenous music is world music, even though indigenous Australian music, Senegalese music, Chinese, Indonesian, like all of these different cultures, that djembe circle sounds nothing like that yang chin. Those are different cultural things. They have different tuning systems. How are they the same genre? Because genre is a social construct. World music is a racist term. This is a hill I will die on.
So what if, for example, like in regards to the definition of world music as we as Westerners know it, if it's in fact a case of like it's actually music made in the West using aspects of other countries' folk music, because I think a lot of world music as we know it is actually recorded in, you know, because if you think about all look at all the shit that Peter Gabriel did in like the 90s, and it's just like he's getting all these musicians from, you know, like Senegal and various other places, but they're all at a recording studio in London or wherever it was, and you know they're playing like a version of their, you know, local ethnic music for. It's been created for a Western audience.
It's been westernized in the same way.
So it's almost like, I don't want to say like a colonization of other people's music.
You can say that.
It's maybe an appropriation.
Yes.
I feel like, well, the term world music refers more to like the appropriation of other musical cultures into a paradigm that we would recognise.
So take like Africelt Sound System, for example, a band that I happen to really like, and they have like a traditional African instruments. I think they have hurdy-gurdy sometimes, Ilian pipes sometimes, so they draw from like these different cultures, and their whole thing is like fusing these different traditional music styles together in what is fundamentally like instrumental Western music. So it's formatted in a way that we can really latch onto quite easily. Yeah, no, it is interesting, and I think this is sort of a mental spiral I went on thinking about like cultural appropriation, and like when I said I had this yang chin and I wanted to get someone in to play this yang chin part, I was like, oh, or is it cultural appropriation for me as a white guy in East Anglia to use a yang chin? I mean, I really like the sound of the instrument. Does that make me a bad guy?
I don't feel like there's anything wrong with that. I want to just say
agree.
now.
I agree, but like I'm also really afraid of criticism, I guess.
Well, I mean,
I feel like you could. I feel like you can get paralyzed with that.
Yeah, this is
sometimes it's good to just do stuff.
Sometimes if it just sounds good, just don't worry about it.
Well, it's like the fine line between cultural appropriation, as the internet and various people on it have defined it, in order to get mad at people for, and like more of a cultural exchange.
Yeah, totally.
The problem is that like a lot of what the West has exchanged with other cultures, like broadly speaking, has been like, hey, we're going to take your stuff and put it in a big building so that other people can look at it and be like, ooh.
Yes.
Whereas, like, I mean, return the Elgin marbles.
No, you're not allowed to call them the Elgin marbles.
Oh yeah,
that's colonisation side. They're the Parthenon marbles. Elgin was the guy what stole them.
I'm a product of my environment, and I apologise.
I guess
you're doing your best, and I respect that.
I suppose the thing it is kind of intrinsically related to the example you mentioned of putting other people's stuff in fucking museums, right? Because when you do that, when you do that, when people have done that in the past, it's to profit off of basically stupid rich people having an excuse to say that they are somehow cultured.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So by you using that instrument or finding someone to use the instrument, if you were doing it just so that you could tell yourself that you are cultured, that would be racist. But you're doing it because you love it.
I mean, there is a little bit of like me. I do genuinely like lots of different musical styles from all across the planet. And I love the sounds of like these unfamiliar instruments, like Balinese gamelan is out there. Like
I'm more of a fan of the Javanese
because you're not stealing.
We will fight about this.
You're not stealing something from someone else to put it in a little fucking cage. You're just you're appreciating it.
Ultimately, if I've written a piece of music using MIDI or a keyboard or whatever, and I load in a shakuhachi patch, does that make me a fascist?
Well, no.
No, it's the things I say and do that make me a fascist.
I just want to disclaimer here that like Liam is not a fascist, but also having thought about it for another 30 seconds, I think when it comes to the creation of art, and music is art. When it comes to sort of like stuff like world music, where Peter Gabriel has done, again, this guy, he has done things like bring a bunch of people over from various places that aren't the UK to record music in the UK, written in the UK for a UK audience, but can also have like, I feel like there's an extent to which it can be a connection between two places almost. And I know that's a very like almost whitewashy way of saying it, but at the same time, like it's very much a grey area. So I think it's good to have these discussions because obviously it's better to figure out where exactly we might be able to undo some of the damage that we have done as like a former colonial empire, but also to like kind of not forget about that, but also like, well, it's there, but this is here now.
Yes.
And you can't see this, I'm moving my arms in a way that denotes like two spaces.
I'll back that up, he is.
Yeah, I think in a way, like, there's good ways to do it and there's bad ways to do it.
Yeah.
Like, the bad way to do it would basically to be like, okay, like, we've basically taken all this, like, indigenous, aboriginal, traditional music and we've put a fat donk on it. Like, like, it's like, no, that's not good.
The ultimate colonization.
It's the ultimate insult. Like, it's like, no, what you've done is you've just basically, like, ruined multiple things at once. I know someone out there like is probably going to listen to this and be like, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put a fat donk on some like traditional Aboriginal music, and maybe it'll be great.
Yeah.
But it'll most likely be shit because like I don't think those two things can mix.
Yeah.
But because it almost feels disrespectful because like stuff like club music, it's not there. Okay, here we go.
Oh, this is such a fucking
Can't wait. Can't wait.
So, I think the Red Bull's finally kicking in.
Yeah, man. That was hours ago.
I know.
That was a month ago.
I have a weird relationship with caffeine.
Interesting.
But the thing in regards to like dance music is, by and large, like I'm not necessarily saying that it's not an appropriate artistic expression, but it's at a different end of like the musical spectrum in terms of intent. Like,
it's very functional, isn't it?
It's functional music.
Yeah.
It's there to essentially like get
Dance.
people. Yeah, it's for dance.
It's for dance.
Not that like.
That's why they call it that.
Yeah, but I mean it's sort of like distilled to an almost, not like a pure form, but like to a point where it's like, yes, the entire reason this exists is so that you have a beat that will pump and
it's a westernized concept of what dancing is, though. It is catering to that, right?
Yes.
'Cause
Yeah,
it's not
totally.
using anything. There's not really many complex rhythms going on usually, which
you don't get fun time signatures like you do in like a lot of prog rock, for example.
Right, yeah, but then, like, those like 9/8 is often used. It is often danced to.
Yeah, man.
In other cultures.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that because you're talking about dance music as serving a function, it's serving a westernized function,
And
a westernized
kind of a commercial
version
function as well.
Yeah.
Like it's designed to like fill up clubs.
Yeah.
Going back to the time signature thing and going back to the Greek thing, quite a lot of Greek folk is actually in 5/4.
Yes.
Which is, and it's just like, oh, okay, this is cool.
There's a great Adam Neely video, I think, about Balkans traditional folk dance, and I'm misremembering, but it's some absurd time signature like a 15.
Yeah.
But you dance in a certain lopsided way that just happens to be so natural to the way these people evolved their dance culture.
But this is the thing, every single culture basically created like their own musical rules for what would essentially define or like, culturally be defined by them.
Yes.
And it's such a difficult one to...
It is.
Yeah.
I think it's worth saying as well that, like, obviously we're three guys with I think grown up in relatively similar ways. I'm completely open to being wrong about everything I've said in the last 2 episodes, and I'm prepared to like be called out and try to do better next time I write music.
It's a conversation.
It is.
No,
This
like,
is the thing.
You can't just not say and do things out.
That would be a terrible
fear.
podcast.
We wouldn't be podcasting if it wasn't for that. But I think there is nothing wrong with having an appreciation for something that is new to you personally,
Yeah.
whoever you are, wherever you're from, and honestly just seeing if you can make art with it
totally.
and interact with it in that way. But there is a difference between that and, I don't know, a white guy buying a sitar and trying to define himself as the sitar guy in his friend group.
You can
and then
buy an
playing- and then,
electro-harmonic sitar
trying
pedal.
to play like Smoke on the Water
Yes.
on the sitar.
You leave George Harrison out of this.
He embedded himself in like that culture. So
Yeah.
like I say, he earned it.
Yeah.
That's them again trying to seem cultured,
Yes.
forcing something into their life just to try
Totally.
and seem more interesting, like it's just inherently a part of their background
Yeah.
now. That is wrong. I would
Yeah, I
say.
think so.
That
I think
is wrong.
I think you're right. I think absolutely if something intrigues you, try it out. And I would say if you want to use an instrument set or anything inspired by any other folk culture, I would say learn as much about that as you possibly can. Because I think not just like, I don't want to say you have to earn the right to use whatever you want to do musically, but I think actually you learn a lot and it opens up a lot more doors and you will feel better. And you will get to say at parties that you are really worldly and cultured if you do that, rather than just buying a sitar or the electro-harmonic sitar pedal. I mean, like the specific situation with No Thanks to You was that I was worried about these ideas of cultural appropriation and such. And I ended up finding a hammered dulcimer player, so it functionally sounds exactly the same as the original instrument I wrote it for, and alleviated that concern of cultural appropriation because there is archaeological evidence of hammered dulcimer in East Anglia dating heckin' way back. So that was a nice way around that, and I wouldn't have ended up hiring and paying a hammered dulcimer player if I hadn't have been so worried about cultural appropriation. So everyone wins, really. God, what was my point?
Well, I guess I was going to ask you then: is saying world music fundamentally kind of wrong?
So I think maybe we just need to, rather than saying world music or folk music, just say the name of the place the music's from.
Yeah.
And I think it is like there's a magazine I really like. It markets itself as a world music magazine. It's called Songlines. It's really good, but it's really funny that it's like there does seem to be this line of like it's folk music if it's European traditional music and otherwise it's world music, and it's like that just seems a really weird way to separate things.
It's an odd delineation,
it's either European or it isn't. I was like, that's weird.
Because it's like what you were saying, Si, about the Peter Gabriel example, right? That is a product that is being recorded in wherever it was recorded. It was
I might have to
recorded
look this up now just to make sure but
it was probably either recorded here or in America, listen, I don't know. But it was recorded within a Western context to basically be sold to Western people. The people that bought that because of how it was advertised to them, they are not doing anything wrong. They're not doing anything wrong by enjoying it. No one recording it is doing anything wrong by recording it. But to retrospectively, today, still call that world music.
Yes.
To call that, to use that definition of world music today, it's not sitting right with me. Now we've
Sorry.
about it.
This is like, I think ultimately the thing is have conversations about music. Like if you're worried about things like cultural appropriation, like talk it out, because it might not be a big issue for other people. I think if you can find someone, if you're interested in a particular traditional music thing, if you can find someone that's lived in that culture and is really good at an instrument and you can pay them for providing a service, do that. Spread the wealth if you got it. Just don't buy the electro-harmonic sitar pedal. That's what I'm saying.
I guess also just ultimately put yourself in the shoes of someone that has a history, or maybe is from somewhere that is not where you are currently from, and then people are talking to you about your culture, about your music that you may have grown up listening to. Maybe you play it, and they just talk about it as world music, and they maybe put it into the same box of places that you've miles away from where you are. So it's a completely different thing in your head, and then the rest of the world addresses you as just being in the same box, and that has to feel so wrong and just disrespectful.
So. And one of the weird things sort of around this that I'm sort of in the back of my mind really worried about is learning bouzouki and kind of trying to learn it in like the traditional Irish way. And having released music like the last EP, The Elements had some Uilleann pipes, which is like Irish bagpipe. Really, like one of my favourite sounding instruments. I didn't think twice about including these kinds of instruments in my music because I was brought up listening to Scottish, Irish folk music. That's just part of these are sounds that I was brought up with. My dad was a fiddle player, so like I was always in folk clubs, like these are just sounds that I like. Now I'm lucky that my name is Liam, so if I'm playing an Irish instrument, people are basically not asking any questions. I'm not Irish. I'm so English, man. So English. I go to Wales, Scotland and Ireland and I'm like, yeah, no, I should have this. Like, I'm so English.
Yeah, it's just part of your psyche now.
Yeah, I can't help it. It's like you with peninsulas. Like,
No.
Can't help but free them. Yeah, so I'm just so worried about cultural appropriation and stuff, man. But I think it's good to be worried about things like that because it means I'm thinking about music.
Yeah.
I'm not just writing stuff and throwing it out into the world.
But it's good that you work through that by having the keenness to learn.
Yeah, totally. And I try to like overcompensate. Like I know this whole stupid history of the bouzouki. That's not helpful to anyone, but it's kind of interesting, and that's me trying to overcompensate for an instrument I like to play.
But I think that's the difference right there. It's the fact that like it's a learning experience and opening yourself up to learning about things versus like, can I use this to sound cool and make money?
Yeah,
I think that is the sort of the key.
I think you're on it there.
I was going to say delineation again, but I've said it like 3 times already.
What was the other word we misused earlier?
Was it something I said?
I think it was. It was a P word.
I think I used that correctly, bro.
I don't know.
In the last 2 weeks, you mean?
I don't know.
Right,
Oh yeah, 2 weeks ago, not right now.
Delineation. Well, anyway, I'm sorry. I'm distracting us with
I think
etymology.
I just want to sound cool.
prolific.
Prolific.
Oh, yeah.
I used that. You know what? Let's use the power of the internet.
No, not right now.
Hang on a minute.
No, we need to solve this.
Hang on a minute. You're telling me I used the word. I used prolific to say that you're doing lots of things.
But no, that's...
releasing lots of music. You're a prolific musician.
Yeah.
Prolific, I suppose, is
In
correct.
fairness, if I can spend 20 minutes talking about the difference between world music and folk music, Ross can Google prolific. I think that's fair.
Of a plant, animal, or person, producing much fruit or foliage or many offspring.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's more kind of a sexual thing than I was thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, for plants, yeah.
What does it mean if someone is prolific? Highly productive.
There we go.
Okay. But it's kind of
produce various things.
I may have wonked my usage of the word, but I stand by it.
Okay, fair enough. My apologies. I take it back.
It's okay.
I will be cancelled.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Sigh, you were about to delineate, I think,
Oh.
in a prolific fashion.
I'm delineating!
Oh, he's melted. That was weird.
That's the sound it makes.
I feel really good about Kicking and Screaming. I'm really glad it's out in the world now. And I don't think I've appropriated nearly enough cultures.
And you should go around the entire world and gather up all of the folk music that you can.
I sort of feel like I am a little bit. Yeah, so like, I think...
Do a Peter Gabriel, mate.
We could do a Peter Gabriel. I hear there's money in that.
I think you've answered my question, and I agree with you, and I feel like I've learned a lot by merely having a conversation, and that's something that maybe more of us could be doing.
Maybe more people should... Okay, here's the key takeaways. Quit your job. Punch your landlord.
No, it's cut off break your landlord's arm.
That was it. Just maim your landlord. Start a podcast. Have conversations. Everyone buy a bouzouki.
And listen to Kicking and Screaming.
Amazing.
The new amazing EP from Blue Alatar.
Heck yeah, man.
Featuring...
Hello. Liam
Taylor.
I panicked.
And Cy Petite.
And blue!
No, it's not Petite. I keep saying Petite.
I'm now that you've offended me, I'm going.
It's Cy...
Pettit.
Cy Pettit, I'm sorry.
It's spelt
Sorry.
phonetically, man. Come on.
I'm sorry.
Phonetically.
2 T's.
Do you want to know about the name?
Yeah.
Blue Alatar. Is one of the wizards in Lord of the Rings.
Can I be real with you?
Yeah, you don't... Okay, we're about
I've
to fall
never
out.
seen...
How dare you
Lord
bring
of
this
the
up?
Rings.
The very fact that you say
I've never seen or...
The fact that you say
obviously read
seen or read.
Lord of the Rings.
That's fine.
I don't know how that one missed me, bro. I don't know.
That's so weird. Interesting. So, Lord of the Rings is really important to me, and I like sort of weaving in Tolkien references. I like unsubtle Tolkien references. So there's a bunch of wizards in Lord of the Rings, Alatar was one of 2 blue wizards that basically don't ever get mentioned. There you go.
Sweet. Well, now they are being mentioned.
Uh-oh. I can't remember the name of the other one.
He is the actual wizard, that's the thing. So, like, you know, he instead of, you know, being in the books and helping various people, like, kick Morgoth in the dick, it's just like, nah, mate, I'm going to make some tunes.
He transcended the book.
He is you now.
Oh, I see. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
I'm fictional. And you can't hurt me. Because I'm not real. My leg. I mean, nothing.
I kicked him. It
You
was
did.
funny.
Ross, I feel like we've ruined your podcast.
Not at all. You have made this podcast funnier and more informative than it previously was.
You're very kind.
Okay, yeah, you're very generous.
This is the longest episode I've recorded in a hot minute, though.
That
so,
sounds... We're going to cut a lot of that, I imagine. My lawyer will be in touch. Yeah, anything past minute 2, we're just going to bin, I think.
I've just got like a fucking book of edits to make.
Just save the cut content for, like, I don't know, bonus shit.
Next time I piss you off,
Yeah, I'll do
like,
some
"Here's
like
what he said."
Soundhole Lost episodes.
Oh, that'd be good.
That'd be funny. You just pitch correct us all so we sound like robots and it's not provably anyone in particular. I mean, don't, but you could.
Oh, like those like Vice documentaries where they've got the dudes that used to launder money, but now they're like wearing a scary mask and they sound like this.
Yeah, you can just pitch that up and hear who it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no one's ever
You've got
going
to
to
put
think
a
of that.
rotary on it as well.
You got to phase invert it. You got to put one hard left and one Ruby double.
Just put
hard
loads
right.
of reverb on it. It's like sounds like he's in a fucking well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, how do we make this intelligible but completely non-reversible at the same time? It's like...
Get them to do a Boutros Ghali impersonation. Speaking of cultural appropriation, that's the second mention of Boutros Ghali in our 2 episodes. 1 Boutros per episode. That's the Soundhole promise. You're going to Google who Boutros Ghali is, and again, you're going to learn more about the world because
Former
of our
General Secretary of the UN.
Yeah, what did he do? Say top 10 Boutros Ghali moments. Go. Coming in at 1.
He died.
Whoa. Boutros. No.
So I think we've all learned a lot. The main takeaway, go listen to Kicking and Screaming, new EP from Blue Alatar.
Heck yeah.
Liam
Out now.
and Sai, thank you very much for coming on the Soundhole
Thank you.
podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Truly, thank you for having us. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. It's good. I got you, bro.
Cheers, buddy.
Sweet. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
What are we proud of today? Is the enemy at the gates or in control? What are we proud of today? Is the enemy at the gates or in control?